Hello, everybody, and welcome to my room. Couple of weeks too late, but that's good because I needed to really examine my thoughts on these. These are the reissues of the Beatles, the Red Album, 1962 to 66, and the Blue Album, 1967 to 1970, or present day if you consider now and then. And a lot of comments I've read and listened to, and some of my thoughts on this, just in general sense. Overall, I'm very pleased with this, especially the stuff on this album. Now, I asked for the vinyl releases for Christmas, but at the same time, I like the way they sequenced it on the actual CDs and the way it is for streaming. Chronological order. On vinyl, they give you a third bonus record that has the additional songs that weren't on the original 1973 releases of these records. And this is the way, as I've said in a previous video, that younger Beatle fans really found out what these guys were all about. And now with the additional songs on here, this really gives you a much more comprehensive overview of what they were about. The one collection, that was just all the number one hits. But with the additional tracks on here, Tomorrow Never Knows, Here, There, and Everywhere, I Want You, She's So Heavy, you really get a complete overview for the casual fan. And yes, I think a 50th anniversary release of these is justified in the fact that in 1973, these were a massive hit. And you weren't getting any new Beatles songs at that point. And then this followed a series of compilations that fans either loved or hated. You know, rock and roll music, which I love, even with the cover art. Love songs, it could have been sequenced better. You don't begin the album with Yesterday, and the last song on the album is P.S. I Love You. P.S. I Love You is not a closing track. Then that was followed by Rarities, and one that I think really had some potential, but they kind of dropped the ball on it. The Beatles' real music, all the songs from their movies, they could have made that a slam-bang compilation. The new mixes on Red and Blue, I want to talk about them. At first, I was going to go track by track. And then it's like, I'm not going to go track by track, but I'm going to go with some of the highlights and not so highlights. My thoughts on those. So here we go. First off, this AI technology, the MAL system that film director Peter Jackson created, this, I was shocked. The early stuff, the stuff from the first album and with the Beatles, it's just, I never thought this could be done because those were done on two tracks only, two tracks. One track for the instruments, the other track for the vocals. And when they mixed those originally in stereo, that's essentially what they did. One channel featured all the instrumentation, the other channel featured the vocals. So you kind of had a lopsided effect, a stereo effect. My jaw dropped when I heard Please Please Me, which is one of my top 10 favorite Beatles songs. It's one of the songs that I give when people say, well, what's your favorite Beatles tune? I usually say A Day in the Life, but I've been going back to a lot of the earlier stuff lately, and somebody asked me, what's your favorite Beatles tune? I said, Please Please Me, because in England, that's the one that really kicked it off. Sure, Love Me Do, but I mean, Please Please Me got to number one on several charts. Again, stereo drums. On the bridge, or the middle eight, as they would say, I don't want to stop complaining, but you know that. Panning the drums like that. Now, granted, in 1962, they wouldn't have done that. But over the years, with better stereo mixes, And me being a drummer, I've stated this before, I love stereo drum tracks. I Want to Hold Your Hand. It was like I heard that, I've heard that song millions and millions of times, but I really heard it this time. That song's got space. It breathes. The vocals, it's like new life is in that song. And yes, they did it. They did a remix on the One Plus collection in 2015, but that was fairly conventional. Giles was trying to stay true to the original mixes as much as he could. Here, beautiful centered drums that when that attack comes in at the beginning, down, 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 you feel it. And I just got goosebumps hearing that. This boy is another one. Those harmonies, you could really make out those harmonies. The blend between those guys, it's amazing. Jumping ahead here to 8 Days a Week, the syncing issue that happened during the One Plus collection, when they did the mix of that, has been corrected here. So very happy about that. The stuff from Rubber Soul, that makes me even more excited for a Rubber Soul album box set. If I Needed Someone, I don't like the fact that they buried on the guitar solo part John's Birdsisk finger picking when George does his solo. Overall, a couple hiccups here and there. I mean, yesterday's yesterday, but a couple of hiccups. I really like what they did on the Red album. It makes me excited. I've been playing this one the most because most of the mixes on this we've already gotten. They did a new mix of Sgt. Pepper in 2017, so those are the mixes that they use here for the Sgt. Pepper stuff. They did new mixes for the White Album. They did new mixes for Abbey Road and Let It Be. So those are the mixes they use here on the Blue Album. So I was actually excited to hear some of the Magical Mystery Tour stuff. So to hear how they did that. And I'm of two minds of I Am the Walrus. I've gotten used to it now. I've played it enough. I've accepted it. I know a lot of people say that is like a horrible mix. I don't think so. It's got some pluses and minuses. I'm mixed on it. Totally mixed. The good, the drums are really good. I like the distortion in John's vocals. The bad, George's guitar licks. George's lead guitar is buried. The choir that is chanting, the Mike Sam singers, sometimes they're buried. And on the spatial audio mix done with Dolby Atmos on Apple Music, they are really buried. The ending of it, I at first was like, oh my gosh, I love how chaotic it was. And now I think it's almost too chaotic because you can't hear the drums and all the instrumentation. It's almost too much. It was almost like we lifted up every fader. And I know they found a new recording of the King Lear radio broadcast that was used on the original mix. A bit mixed on that. The whole first half of the song I like. The second half of the song, when the radio comes in and all that, I like the fact that if you have headphones on, you're hearing stereo phasing, which is pretty cool. But other than that, the ending, Giles Martin needed to pull back a bit. He needed to pull back a bit. But who knows what his directive was? I always get upset with people who say, why does Giles think he knows better than his father? Or I've explained this before. It's not like Giles Martin gets up in the morning and says, what Beatles stuff can I mix today? He's commissioned to do this. This is a commission. And he does have his bosses to answer to. So maybe they told him, get crazier with it. But the mix of Full on the Hill, I thought was just spot on. Magical Mystery Tour. I was able to hear the guitar better in that one. So that thing just had a rocking feel to it, throughout in the new mix. Some of the other new mixes they did on here, Old Brown Shoe, some people were upset about that. I'm not upset about that. Old Brown Shoe was always kind of a strange stereo mix to begin with. The vocals were always, I don't know, kind of distorted. I don't know. But I think it's pretty good, but all the other mixes on here, we've heard before. We heard the Hey Jude, the Hey Jude mix, that's from the One Plus collection. Oh, yeah, Revolution, the new mix of that. Very disappointed. Very disappointed. I thought that they could have done more with it. The original stereo mix, as John described it, he said it was a heavy track and they made it into a piece of ice cream. The original mono of Revolution, that became my go-to. The original 45, that's my go-to. There's heavy distortion on that thing. It really kicks ass. Here, there's so much Giles could have done. He could have used artificial double tracking, like Billy Corgan Smashing Pumpkins did, to get that in both speakers. I think that would have just put that whole thing over the top. Instead, it sounds fairly conventional, But again, it doesn't hurt the overall, and we still have the original mixes if we want them. But overall, I'm very happy with these. I'm very happy with these. The mixes on here are the true winner. I've been playing this one a lot more than this because I've heard most of the mixes on here. But if you are just a casual fan and you want a good overview of the Beatles, these are must-haves. You should get them, and this is a more complete overview than what originally came out 50 years ago in 1973. So I went on a bit long here, but I really appreciate your patience and sticking with me here. Drop me a line and let me know your thoughts about this. And I got a video that I'm posting that my younger son did with his best friend. It's about the movie Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So give them some love when I post that in the upcoming days. Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you soon.